Recovery runs for endurance runners. What are they? Why do we do them? And how do we do them? So, recovery runs are really easy runs, and spoiler alert, they don't help you recover. So, the name is a bit confusing. A recovery run does not actually aid in your recovery. Draining the energy systems and putting stress, mechanical stress, by running on the body does not help it recover from training in any way. It doesn't flush out toxins. It doesn't speed up your metabolism. It doesn't stretch things out. No, it doesn't do any of those things. It's still a training stimulus. It is draining the system. It is not recharging it. Recharging it is sleeping, eating, resting. Okay, draining the system is running, strength training, any other kind of exercise. And recovery runs, because they're easy, are not special. They are just easy training sessions. So they are not actually going to help you recover. What they are going to allow you to do is to add more running volume at an easy intensity to your weekly mileage, which is going to help you improve certain aspects of your physiology. And it's going to do that at a relatively low cost because the energy expenditure is quite low. They're quite easy. They're not very stressful on the body. The injury risk is low. It allows you to get some easy miles in, which is going to help with your training, but at a relatively low cost energetically and a relatively low risk in terms of injuries. So when we do recovery runs with our athletes, we'll get them to do recovery runs in zone 1, which is anything below 50% of their VO2 max, which you don't need to know that, to assess what your recovery run pace should be. If you want to know if you're in zone 1, you should be able to talk very comfortably. You should be able to talk kind of the way I'm talking now, very much in full sentences easily. That's the kind of effort or intensity you want to be going for when you're doing a zone 1 recovery run. We'll often allow our runners to do their recovery runs in zone 1 and zone 2, so it allows them to sort of drift between the two. And this just allows a little bit more flexibility, especially if you are someone of a lower running fitness. Trying to stay in zone 1 can be quite difficult without having to walk. So having that flexibility to drift into zone 2 a bit and then into zone 1 a bit makes the recovery run a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit easier to execute well, and still accomplishes the agenda, which is to keep the training intensity low and get the workout done. So all we do for our recovery run is whether it's a 30-minute run, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, it can be longer, or it's a set distance like 3 miles, 5 miles, whatever it is. We're just going to settle into a zone 1 or zone 2, but ideally zone 1 pace or heart rate. You can do it by either. Heart rate would be a preferable metric to use, but it can be a little bit more complicated sometimes. And pace is easier, and you can also do it just based on feel. So if you feel like you can talk very comfortably, you're in zone 1. And then you just stay in zone 1. You don't need to warm up for these because they are very easy. So you can just stay in zone 1 for the duration of the workout and then stop. You don't need to do a cool down either. Now, recovery runs are to be used more so with athletes who are training more hours per week, more hours of running per week, and they want to get more time in their oxidative system training zone, which is zone 1 and 2, mainly zone 2. But if we were to do the workouts in zone 2, all of them, then it's going to be more of a training stimulus. It can be harder to stick to. It can be harder stress on the body, and it increases injury risk a little bit. So if we want to hedge our bets a bit, we do some of those running minutes in zone 1 with recovery runs. So we might have someone doing, 3 hours of running a week, and then with an extra 2 30-minute sections of zone 1 recovery runs. But if someone's doing a very low amount of total mileage, so if someone's running less than 3 hours per week, they really can just do their sessions as zone 2 runs for endurance, and then their other workouts is indicated by their current stage of training. They don't really need recovery runs. You don't need recovery runs unless you're running quote unquote a lot, which is at least 3 hours or more per week. Now, obviously a lot is a relative term. Some people run a ton more than that. But the more running volume you're doing per week, the more hours of running you're doing per week, the more useful recovery runs will be, because they'll allow you to get some of that volume at a very low intensity. You'll still get that training stimulus to your oxidative system. You'll still get that mechanical stimulus from whacking into the ground 5,000 steps an hour. That's going to increase your resilience, your toughness, your resilience in your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, and joints. So we still get those mechanical training stimuli, as well as the physiological stimuli of boosting our aerobic base by targeting the oxidative system. It's just not quite as potent a training stimulus as, let's say, a zone 2 run, but it's still helpful. And because it comes at a lower energetic cost, lower injury risk, it's easier to get those in. So the more weekly volume you're doing, the more recovery runs will be helpful. And typically we're going to put them in after harder training sessions. So for me, I do my strength training on a Saturday and a Sunday, which means by Monday, my legs are very tired. So I often have a recovery run that day, which allows me to go very easy, like I did this morning, actually. And that means that the muscle soreness that I've got my strength training doesn't impede one of my higher quality workouts, but I can still get that 45 minutes of running in. So my total weekly volume is more reasonable. Whereas if I didn't do that, my weekly volume would be lower. Often we'll put them in for our runners after harder training sessions. Like if we have a longer long run for that athlete, which they're not accustomed to, we might do a recovery run the next day as opposed to an endurance run. Same with if they're having an interval session, maybe it's hill sprint, that's quite a hard session for them. The next day, instead of having an endurance run in zone 2, we'll give them a recovery run in zone 1. And this is really the point of recovery runs. They're a very straightforward and simple run. They are important. They're more important the more amount of total weekly volume that you're doing. The other time that we use them with our athletes is as they're coming out of what we call our recovery program. So we have recovery program steps. So step 1 is when you're just able to run, walk without too much pain. Step 2 is when you're able to do continuous running without pain or with minimal pain. Step 3 is when you're able to do tempo runs in zone 3. Step 4 is when you're able to do threshold runs in zone 4. Step 5 is when you're able to do VO2 max and sprint interval and hill sprints in zone 5. So obviously there's more mechanical stress as you go up the steps. When we are moving a runner from step 1, when they're only able to do run walks, into step 2, when they're able to run continuously, we'll tend to use recovery runs as their training target. The reason we do that is it because it allows them to run really slow. They can run in zone 1, they can run a little bit in zone 2, but really what we're trying to do is titrate the dose of steps, the mechanical stimuli here. So what we want is a nice, easy run. So we don't mind if they're running in zone 1 nice and slow. It's helpful because what we're really trying to train at that stage is just the ability to tolerate the steps involved with the runs of that duration. So as we're moving athletes from a run-walk stage where they can't tolerate continuous running, and we don't think they're quite ready to just do zone 2 runs, which are our endurance runs and long runs, we'll have this step where we've focused on recovery runs. So we'll allow them to run in zone 1 or 2, but we will ask them to run continuously, not giving them walk breaks. And what we're trying to do is apply that stimulus to the body and allow them to adapt to it, become more resilient, stronger, less sensitive, so the injured area can recover and become more able to move them up into higher steps and do more endurance runs in zone 2, and then eventually move on to tempo runs in zone 3. And that is recovery runs.